Why some people recover faster than others. Have you ever watched someone go through something that should have broken them, and somehow they were back on their feet before you were? Maybe they lost a relationship they thought would last forever. Maybe they were rejected from an opportunity they had spent years chasing. Maybe their business failed, their plans collapsed, or life changed in a way they never saw coming. For a moment, they struggled just like anyone else. But then something changed. They started moving again. Meanwhile, another person can experience a much smaller setback and remain stuck for months, replaying what happened, losing motivation, and wondering why they cannot simply move forward. Most people assume the difference is personality. Maybe some people are naturally tougher. Maybe they feel less. Maybe they were simply born with stronger minds. But psychology suggests something far more interesting. Mentally strong people are not protected from pain. They are not people who never fall apart. The real difference is what their mind learns to do after the hit. And once you understand that difference, resilience starts looking less like something you are born with and more like something you can train. Mentally strong people still fall apart. Here is one of the biggest misunderstandings about mental strength. We imagine resilient people as emotionally bulletproof. They get rejected and immediately move on. They lose something important and somehow remain calm. Life hits them hard, but nothing seems to shake them. So when we struggle for days, weeks, or even months after something painful happens, we assume something must be different about us. But mentally strong people still get overwhelmed. They still have nights when they cannot sleep. They still replay conversations, question themselves, lose motivation, and sometimes wonder whether things will ever feel normal again. The difference is not that they avoid the emotional crash. It is that they do not build a permanent home inside it. At some point, even while the pain is still there, they begin searching for something they can control. One decision, one conversation, one small action. That matters because resilience does not begin when the pain disappears. It begins the moment your brain realizes, I may not control what happened, but I can still control what happens next. And psychology suggests that this sense of control may be far more important than most people realize. The science of why your brain shuts down. When life hits hard, most people assume their brain should immediately start searching for a solution. But that is not always what happens. Decades ago, psychologists studying helplessness noticed something strange. After repeated exposure to stressful situations they could not control, subjects sometimes stopped trying to escape, even when escape later became possible. For years, researchers believed helplessness was something the brain learned. But later research suggested a more surprising possibility. The shutdown response may come first. When your brain experiences intense stress, it can naturally reduce action and conserve energy. What changes that response is detecting that something you do can actually affect what happens next. In other words, your brain is constantly asking a hidden question: do my actions still matter here? When the answer feels like no, you may freeze, withdraw, procrastinate, or stop trying. But when your brain discovers even a small amount of control, something begins to change. Action becomes possible again. And this explains why two people can experience similar setbacks yet recover at completely different speeds. The difference may not be how much pain they feel. It may be how quickly they rediscover what they can still control. Your brain has a hidden reset switch. Think of your brain like the electrical system in a house. When too much electricity moves through the system, the circuit breaker trips. The lights go out. Everything stops. At first, that looks like something has gone wrong. But the breaker is not broken. It is protecting the system from overload. Your brain can respond to overwhelming stress in a similar way. After rejection, loss, failure, or prolonged uncertainty, you may suddenly feel exhausted, disconnected, or unable to take action. That does not necessarily mean you have become weak. Your system may simply be protecting itself. But here is where resilience becomes important. A circuit breaker is different from a fuse. A fuse burns out and must be replaced. A breaker can be reset. Your brain also needs evidence that the switch can be turned back on. And that evidence often comes from control. You make one decision. You complete one small task. You take one action and see that something changes because of it. Each moment quietly tells your brain, my actions still have an effect. That is the hidden reset switch. Mentally strong people are not people whose breaker never trips. They are people who gradually learn where the switch is and how to turn it back on. Modern life is quietly making you less resilient. Here is the strange problem with modern life. We are exposed to more stress than ever. But much of that stress gives us almost nothing we can actually control. You open your phone and see bad news from another country. Someone attacks you in the comments. An algorithm decides whether your work gets noticed. Thousands of strangers argue about problems you cannot personally change. Your brain receives the stress, but it receives almost none of the control. At the same time, we have become extremely good at removing small, controllable discomforts from everyday life. Hungry? Order food. Bored? Start scrolling. Something difficult to say? Send a text. Or avoid the conversation completely. A task feels frustrating? Close the laptop and come back later. None of these choices is automatically bad. The problem appears when avoiding discomfort becomes your default response. Because resilience needs practice. Every time you face something uncomfortable, take action and discover that you can handle it. Your brain receives evidence. Difficulty does not mean helplessness. But if every uncomfortable moment becomes something to escape, that lesson never gets reinforced. And slowly, without realizing it, you may be training your brain to become better at avoiding discomfort instead of recovering from it. Trap number 1. When protecting your peace becomes avoidance. There is a phrase that sounds healthy almost every time you hear it. Protect your peace. And sometimes, that is exactly what you should do. Walk away from toxic situations. Set boundaries. Stop giving your attention to people who constantly drain you. But there is a hidden trap. Sometimes what feels like protecting your peace is actually protecting yourself from discomfort. You cancel the meeting because you feel anxious. You avoid the difficult conversation because it might become awkward. You never send the message because rejection is possible. You quit something challenging and tell yourself it simply wasn't right for you. And immediately, you feel better. That relief is what makes avoidance so powerful. Your brain learns, I felt uncomfortable. I escaped. The discomfort disappeared. So the next time something difficult appears, avoiding it becomes even more tempting. Slowly, your comfort zone gets smaller while your sensitivity to discomfort grows. Real resilience requires knowing the difference between protecting yourself from something genuinely harmful and escaping something simply because it feels difficult. Sometimes protecting your peace means walking away, but sometimes protecting your future means staying long enough to discover, this is uncomfortable, but I can handle it. Trap number 2, the fairness contract. There is another trap that can keep people emotionally stuck for far longer than they realize. It begins when something unfair happens. Someone betrays you, takes credit for your work, treats you badly, leaves without explaining why, and your mind starts building a case. You replay the conversation. You imagine what you should have said. You collect evidence proving they were wrong. You wait for an apology, an explanation, or some moment when they finally admit what they did. Without realizing it, you have created what we might call a fairness contract. I cannot fully move forward until this situation feels fair. But there is a problem. The other person may never apologize. They may never understand your perspective. They may never give you the closure you believe you need. And if your recovery depends on their response, they still control something incredibly valuable: how long you stay stuck. Mental strength begins when you separate two questions. Was what happened wrong? And do I need them to admit it before I move forward? You can know you deserved better without waiting for someone else to confirm it. Sometimes resilience means choosing freedom before you ever receive fairness. Trap number 3. When pain becomes your identity. Some setbacks hurt twice. First, because of what happened. And second, because of what you start believing it says about you. A business fails. And instead of thinking, that business failed, you begin thinking, I'm a failure. Someone leaves. And this relationship ended quietly becomes, I'm unlovable. You get rejected. And one painful moment becomes evidence that you are simply the kind of person people reject. This shift is dangerous because events can change. Identity feels permanent. When your brain sees something as a problem, it can search for a response. But when the problem becomes who you believe you are, action starts feeling pointless. Why try again if failure is who you are? Why trust again if being abandoned is what always happens to you? Mentally strong people learn to separate the wound from the identity. They can say, this happened to me, but this is not me. That small distinction creates psychological space. You can learn from failure without becoming failure. You can experience rejection without turning rejected into your identity. Because resilience becomes much harder when every painful chapter is allowed to rewrite the entire story of who you are. The hidden cost of protecting yourself too much. After enough painful experiences, protecting yourself can start to feel like wisdom. You stop taking risks. You avoid difficult conversations. You keep expectations low so disappointment cannot surprise you. You stay away from situations where rejection, failure, or embarrassment might happen. And for a while, this strategy works. You hurt less. But something else happens quietly. Your world begins getting smaller. The less discomfort you face, the fewer opportunities your brain gets to learn that discomfort is survivable. Then ordinary challenges begin feeling heavier than they used to. A difficult conversation feels overwhelming. A small rejection feels devastating. An uncertain decision feels dangerous. So you protect yourself even more. And the cycle continues. Avoid discomfort. Feel temporary relief. Lose capacity. Fear discomfort more. Avoid again. Eventually, protection can cost you the very thing it was supposed to preserve, your ability to live fully. Resilience is not built by exposing yourself to unnecessary suffering. It is built by refusing to let fear remove every difficult experience from your life. Because sometimes the safest life does not create the strongest mind. Sometimes strength grows when you deliberately discover, this may be difficult, but difficult does not mean I cannot handle it. The real secret of mental resilience. So if resilience is not about avoiding pain, what actually makes someone mentally strong? The answer is simpler than most people expect. They shorten the distance between the setback and their first controlled action. Something painful happens. They may feel angry, lost, embarrassed, or completely overwhelmed. But eventually, they stop asking only, why is this happening to me? And begin asking, what can I still control right now? Maybe they cannot fix the relationship, but they can stop sending another message. Maybe they cannot reverse the rejection, but they can make the next application. Maybe they cannot recover everything they lost, but they can get out of bed, take a walk, make one phone call, or complete one task. These actions may look almost meaningless from the outside, but psychologically, they are powerful. Every controlled action gives your brain new evidence. I am not completely helpless here. And that is what resilience really looks like. Not becoming impossible to hurt. Not pretending everything is fine. Not forcing yourself to feel positive. It is learning how to find the smallest piece of control that still belongs to you and using it. Because mentally strong people do not always recover without falling. They simply become better at beginning the reset. The 4 laws of becoming harder to break. Once you understand that resilience is about recovering control, the next question becomes obvious. How do you actually train it? Start with 4 simple rules. First, find the smallest controllable action. When everything feels overwhelming, do not try to fix your entire life. Make the bed. Send one email. Take one walk. Give your brain evidence that your actions still change something. Second, Choose some discomfort voluntarily. Have the conversation you keep avoiding. Finish the difficult task. Sit with boredom instead of immediately reaching for your phone. Small challenges teach your brain that discomfort is something you can move through, not something you must escape. Third, become flexible instead of rigid. Mental strength does not mean suppressing every emotion or handling everything alone. Sometimes strength means pushing forward. Sometimes it means resting. Sometimes it means asking for help. The strongest response is the one that fits the situation. Fourth, build an identity larger than any single part of your life. You are more than your job, relationship, achievement, or reputation. When your identity has multiple foundations, losing one does not destroy the entire structure. Practice these four laws consistently, and something changes. You stop trying to become impossible to break. You become someone who knows how to rebuild. What happens when you become hard to manipulate? Something unexpected happens when you become more emotionally resilient. People who once knew exactly how to destabilize you may suddenly feel like you have changed. Someone gets angry, but you no longer rush to calm them down. Someone becomes distant, but you do not immediately chase them for reassurance. Someone creates drama, hoping you will react, explain yourself, or lose control. But this time, you stay grounded. Not because you stopped caring, because their emotions no longer automatically become your instructions. This can confuse people who were comfortable with the old pattern. They may call you cold, distant, different. They may even say, "You're not the person you used to be." And in one sense, they are right. You are no longer as easy to pull away from your center. Mental strength changes the relationship between other people's behavior and your response. There is now a pause between what they do and what you choose to do next. And inside that pause is something powerful: control. You can listen without absorbing everything. You can care without surrendering your stability. You can walk away without needing to win. The goal is not to become emotionally untouchable. It is to become harder for someone else's chaos to decide who you become. The hidden price of becoming mentally strong. There is a side of mental strength that people rarely talk about. As you become harder to destabilize, some relationships may begin to feel different. People are often comfortable knowing what version of you they're going to get. They know what makes you panic, what makes you chase, what makes you over-explain, what makes you immediately drop everything to fix the tension. But when those reactions disappear, the relationship changes. And not everyone will like the new version of you. Some may say you have become distant. Others may assume you no longer care simply because you stopped reacting the way you used to. But there is another cost that can be even quieter. When you become known as the strong person, people may stop asking whether you are okay. They assume you will handle it. They bring you their problems because you always seem capable of carrying them. And eventually, strength can create a strange kind of distance. That is why resilience should never mean becoming unreachable. You can be strong and still need support. You can recover quickly and still feel deeply. Real mental strength is not proving that you need nobody. It is knowing you can stand on your own without pretending you must always stand alone. You will still fall, but you won't stay down. Here is what becoming mentally strong does not promise you. You will not become immune to heartbreak. Failure will still hurt. Rejection will still sting. And there may still be moments when life hits so hard that you need time to recover. But something important begins to change. You spend less time believing the pain will last forever. A setback that once controlled you for months may control you for weeks, then days. Eventually, you begin recognizing the pattern. I have been here before. You remember the difficult seasons you thought would never end, the losses you survived, the moments when you were certain you could not keep going, and somehow, you did. That history becomes evidence. Not evidence that nothing can hurt you. Evidence that pain does not get the final decision. You know how to find one thing you can control. You know how to take one small action. You know how to begin to reset. And that may be the real meaning of a bulletproof mindset. not a mind that never gets hit. A mind that has learned, whatever happens, I know where the switch is. If this video changed the way you think about mental strength, comment the number 14 below. Let's see how many people are ready to stop trying to become unbreakable and start becoming better at rebuilding.